This is Jonathan Ferguson, the Keeper of Firearms and Artillery at the Royal Armouries Museum in the UK, which houses a collection of thousands of iconic weapons from throughout history. And I'm Dave Jewett, your host and guide. Join us as I take Jonathan on a journey through the zone as we take a look at the weapons of S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, Heart of Chernobyl.
It's the Vector.
In-game, the Vector's called the Integral-A. So I'm guessing Integral is a reference to the recoil system. But you can see on the side of the in-game model, they've basically just inverted the V that you see on the side of a real Vector to make it an A.
Interesting. That's a little cheeky. Does that mean that we actually have an A as well? Video game version unlocked.
If you like this kind of content, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss next week's episode. If you can't wait that long, however, you can join us on our Patreon so you can watch next week's episode 1 week early. Next time, we'll be taking a trip to the movies as we break down the weapons of the Captain America films. There is also the extended edition of this episode, which comes in at an hour long. So if you want deeper breakdowns and further discussion from Jonathan and I, head over to our Patreon. But whether you watch us there or subscribe to us here on YouTube, we appreciate your support. Right, grab your sausages and energy drinks as it's over to Jonathan.
Dnipro and I were just discussing a certain puzzle we found in the zone, but we can't quite seem to get all the pieces to fit. Maybe you can figure it out.
That's the most Canadian Ukrainian man I've ever heard. I'm not here to comment on accents. So this is in-game footage. Is it?
Yeah, the cutscenes are actually live, so if I were to drop a bunch of medkits and sausages on the table, they'd all be moving around. But,
medkits and sausages, the Dave Jewett story.
The two methods of healing in S.T.A.L.K.E.R.
That's all in-game, which means everything you see there in terms of the components looks really good, really accurate. The way he is stripping that down is maybe a little lacking in the weight of the components. They don't seem to each have any mass in space. Yes, it's a little hard to describe, but this is the level of nitpickery that I have to descend to with that scene to actually try and criticize this in any way, because to actually have a fully realized virtual weapon, we are at a level of fidelity that's just so impressive.
So what are the actual parts that he's taking off the weapon? Because I guess you'd call this field stripping the AK, right?
Yeah, so he's doing it as he should. Magazine off. He's then cocking it, popping off the top cover, taking out the recoil spring and guide rod, removing the bolt carrier with the bolt. Now what he didn't do, which he'd probably get shouted at or kicked for, is remove the bolt from the bolt carrier, because you can't properly clean the thing, and that's really why you would strip it like this. Then again, he's testing the character here, so you wouldn't necessarily need to take the bolt out, but that's really the only thing I would say. We've got two mags jungle taped together. We have green polymer furniture. Oh, we have a jam there. Love to see a stoppage and getting cleared. I don't know why it has. I haven't finished putting this back together, but I say I don't know why. I think it's probably because it was in prior games, but the upper handguard has 3 vents cut into it. That's something you could do with a Dremel, I suppose, if you wanted extra cooling. And given how much ammo you're putting through this thing in the game, then maybe that's sensible. I don't know, but it's not standard. So we've got a much higher fidelity to the real thing in this sequel, but I'm still seeing a bit of kind of leftover. We want it to look like the gun from our original game, is what I'm guessing that is. And grenade launcher is correct. GP25, I'm guessing. I can't get a great look at it. The GP30 is pretty similar, but we see the muzzle loading VOG25 grenade. That's correct. It goes in kind of like a muzzle loader. Well, exactly like a muzzle loader, because it is. Either way, you shoot people in the torso with 5.45 by 39 and they go, ow. That's maybe the most immersion breaking thing I've seen so far. And we have our 74 AKS-74U now. We can tell that if we couldn't see the front because of this form of rear sight, which we can clearly see model there, and I can even see the close quarter setting of the sight. Yeah, looking pretty good. We could maybe quibble over a couple of dimensions there.
One thing that struck me is there's obviously a difference between the sound effects firing outside and inside, but they've done a real good job of firing outside and a second later hearing like a second snap, like in the distance.
Oh,
That
wow,
report
okay.
coming back to you. That sounds really good.
That's, yeah, that kind of environmental sound in an open world game is very important. So we've got a Cobra type red dot on there. So both of these are lacking optic rails. Do have examples with optic rails, but not of the standard AKS-74 or AKS-74U, unfortunately. I like the sparks there. So the muzzle flash and the smoke and the sparks seems to vary with every shot and in different lighting as well. It appears different outdoors, as it should. And occasionally we're getting these bright sparks, which is a thing with sort of Eastern Bloc ammunition.
You can see, despite that guy being in the watchtower, very far away, he's still able to pepper me with buckshot. He was using a shotgun from that range.
Yeah, how far away do we think that is in game?
It's far enough that I was missing a lot of my shots.
Yeah, I mean, as we've discussed before, it's certainly doable, depending on the choke for a standard buckshot load to carry out and be a threat out. I mean, hell, out to 100 yards, potentially 100 meters. Some of them are probably going to hit you, and they're not going to be pleasant. I quite like the flipping over for the reload there, which you have to do with this, as you can tell. Quite plausibly done as well. Sometimes there's a bit of fudge around. I've got some rounds. The rounds go in the gun somehow. But here we see them drop in. That's a very cool shotgun sound. Got some earbuds in today, so I think I'm getting better sound. So everyone's games that where I haven't complimented the sound design might be because I was using substandard equipment. This sounds great. Environmental changes in audio, and the echo on the inside as well is great. Sort of a short, sharp, punchy report, and then the echo coming in as well. Great.
One detail I quite like that I'll point out now. There's different ammunition types in Stalker 2. So, armor-piercing ammunition for your AK, for example. To swap to that ammo, you just replace the magazine. You replace it with a magazine that, in theory, has the ammunition in. With shotguns, the character actually has to clear the internal magazine of the weapon, so pump all the rounds out before then replacing them, which I thought was a nice touch, nice attention to detail.
Yeah, it's like we always say, realistic behaviors that add to gameplay, or at least don't hurt it, do it. Is that, how tense is it to have to empty the weapon and then maybe get attacked by something else in the meantime, or the thing you're trying to shoot, before you've got the right rounds in? Or maybe you only get one arm-piercing round in or whatever, and you have to shoot that and then you're empty. It adds so much to be able to make guns behave as guns really behave. I mean, I think it's quite tense just having to flip your shotgun over to load it, to be honest. Like, at least with a pump gun, especially a pistol grip, although you could do this with any of them, you could keep it under the arm looking over the gun and top it up while looking at the target and have it ready to shoot in an instant, even if you have to shoot one-handed with the stock under the arm. This thing, less so. You've got to take it sort of further out of the fight in order to reload it. I'm sure there's a technique for reaching up and getting shells in to top it off. It's the Vector.
In-game, the Vector's called the Integral-A. So I'm guessing Integral is a reference to the recoil system. But you can see on the side of the in-game model, they've basically just inverted the V that you see on the side of a real Vector to make it an A.
Interesting. That's a little cheeky. Does that mean that we actually have an A as well? Video game version unlocked. Good high rate of fire. These things do run at a, moderate, I suppose, on automatic. Does that sound like what you just heard? Too far off. Feels like there might be more going on with this. So with something like a Thompson on semi-automatic, you'll get a click when you pull the trigger because there's a disconnector that is disconnecting the trigger. It's part of how it operates. With this, all that's really happening is the trigger is pivoting, it's hitting a wall, it's engaging with the mechanism. It's not making a click though. This is astonishingly nerdy detail here, but just because I have it in front of me, I can compare the exact sound effect.
Well, that click was coming from that was happening to tell you there's a jam. So would the sound change if you had a jammed vector with something in it?
That's a good point. It's going to be hard to simulate without some inert rounds and a lot of faffing. It takes a bit of effort to cock these things, by the way. It depends what's caused the stoppage. So as long as the firing pin has released, which is what that sound was, you're always going to end up with that dead trigger and no clicking per se. For design and safety reasons, the trigger's always going to be disconnected from the mechanism until it's A, cocked, and B, in battery. And all you're going to get is a click. So probably not, but it's incredibly minor. Yeah, so that cocking action there. Now these are brand new guns, and I could probably do with more Weetabix, but it's not as easy as that to pull back that cocking handle. It is now, it's cocked. Sounds good with the suppressor on. We've got 2-round bursts going there. 2-round, which is correct. Yeah, we have on here single shot, 2-round burst, and automatic. And that Super V deflecting diving bolt really is at its most effective on that 2-round burst. Somehow it really does mitigate the recoil exceptionally well. But 2 very high rate shots. The Malyuk. So to get real briefly, this was seen somewhat frequently in the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. I believe it was on issue 2, elements of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Special Operations Forces. For a couple of years now, I haven't seen any of these Malyuk bullpups. As you can probably detect from its design, from this view that I'm looking at anyway, you have essentially an AKM receiver in there, and it is it's essentially a bullpupped AK. Distinctively Ukrainian. We'd love to have one in the collection. I don't know that there are that many in use anymore. It's almost like an AK crashed into the back of a S.T.A.L.K.E.R AUG. Can't tell you how faithful this is to the real thing because we don't have one. I don't wonder if the designers had access to a real one for this.
It's interesting, the detail and the choice of weapons that have gone into S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, because a lot of the development team have fought in the Ukraine war themselves. I think has influenced a lot of the design choices, even the naming of this weapon being named the Dnipro after a city in Ukraine, after a river that flows through Ukraine. It's interesting, I think, how much players can see of that and how much authenticity they might be able to read from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's I'm guessing some of the delay of this coming out was to do with the conflict, the war, I should say.
Yeah, it very much was. But they've done, in spite of the horrible situation they were put in, they've made an exceptionally impressive game. And the fact that they've been able to use some of their heavy real-world experiences and put it into a game that they've developed is an incredible story to even consider.
Agreed. Yeah, it feels almost petty commenting on anything in this one for that reason. It just goes to show, doesn't it? Violent video games that have been so controversial over the years, they're not real. They're an escape from the real. And something as, on the face of it, as horrific as this, with monsters in an irradiated, or post-irradiation wasteland, effectively, in a real part of the world, with some real world guns and some real world experiences behind them, that's still escapism. We've well past the first generation of soldiers who relax by pretending to kill people. They're not killing people. Violent video games are not violence. I know we all know that, but it kind of really brings it home. Ukrainian specific design, not the only one out there. We don't currently have any. When the situation allows for it, it would be nice to preserve, some artifacts actually, as well as some artifacts in terms of firearms that may have been in places, as well as from a technical point of view and a fun gaming point of view, some designs that we have seen crop up. So it'd be almost a shame if they hadn't included the Malyuk, even if it's maybe not seeing as, and it might be selective observation, I'm sure they're still out there seeing some use, but there's also an absolute glut of Western influence designs in there as well. A rifle's a rifle at the end of the day.
If you're enjoying the episode so far, you may be interested in the hour-long extended edition over on our Patreon page. Yes, Jonathan and I get very nerdy about this game. You can also get early access to our marvelous episode on the guns of Captain America. Either way, thank you for supporting us, watching here on YouTube, commenting, subscribing, all that good stuff. But let's get back to the video.
So if the Malyuk is kind of expected in this part of the world, the Carmel is not. And no, that's not American for caramel. I believe it's Mount Carmel in Israel. It's another sort of geographical tribute name, as it were, that IWI tends to give their firearms. That jam there looked like the cap hadn't been struck. So sorry, this design is pretty new. IWI decided that the bullpup Tavor was not to everyone's taste. And they keep making those, but they're going to come up with their own take on a conventional layout rifle. That's what the Carmel is. So this being quite a new design, we haven't had the opportunity to get hold of. Limited things that I can say about it. It has quite a little bit of a science fiction aesthetic to it. That's another horrific looking creature there.
Sorry, did I turn my camera on? That's my bad.
Wow. Are you fishing for compliments, though?
I'll make the joke before someone else does it. One thing I wanted to note about S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 is hip firing, or I guess point shooting, is really effective.
Yeah.
So if you've got a fairly high-powered optic on your weapon, you're not sort of over-zooming, which can be really frustrating in games, trying to get your eye on target if you've got something like an ACOG on. But just firing from low ready really works well.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Like, an amateur doing that is going to be hopeless. They're not going to hit a thing. Somebody who's with this sort of experience that after about 5 minutes in a game like this, your character already has, is going to know when they pull the trigger, let's say it's here, they're going to know, looking over the gun, where those bullets are going to hit, out to a certain distance. Obviously, the further out you get, unless you're really practiced, the more chance of missing. And ideally, you do want to be using some sort of sight. That's why we see, this has a red dot on it. That's why we see things like magnifiers that you can rock out the way or even remove to give you ability to be in your sights at closer ranges. But, for a long time, shooting from either the center of the chest, looking over the gun, that was a favored SAS technique, or down under the arm, pulled into the hip or the waist position, as it was called. You can even observe where your bullets are striking. If you've got a high enough capacity magazine, the Papasha 41 does that. So you actually see where the bullets are hitting and adjust. So I have no problem at all. Like some games make hip firing absolutely worthless, and the truth's kind of in the middle.
Remington 700.
Yeah, I guess it is.
To be honest, I saw the green and I immediately thought SV98.
That was my first reaction, but when it was held like this, I could see it wasn't. And looking at the bolt shroud, the safety, yeah, I can see the Remington 700. And the bolt handle, actually, with the domed checkered bits, top and bottom. I mean, I'm not familiar with a chassis or a stock that looks like that, but the options are endless for a Remington 700 barreled action. You put that in anything, and people do. How do you feel about the sniping in this game?
Yeah, it's very effective when you're fighting later game enemies. Ones that are actually human, that carry firearms. Against mutants, it's almost a hindrance using a sniper rifle, which is why I made a little addition to the weapon later in the clip.
That's such a video game thing to do. It's an XM26 or M26.
Yeah, underslung shotgun or underbarrel shotgun attached to this sniper rifle. Which, okay, usually this would be like a cursed gun entry or something, but in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, it actually works really well. It makes a lot of sense because you're limited to the equipment you can carry because there's a weight system. But
Right.
having a close ranged weapon to defend against things like mutants that run at you is like almost essential. But then you're hampering yourself by like, okay, well, I could have an assault rifle and a shotgun, or I could have a sniper rifle and an assault rifle, but then I'm lacking at close range. But you can save weight and still have a close range option for the mutant rats and bloodsuckers by just putting a shotgun on your sniper rifle.
It makes perfect logical sense. I mean, the reasons you wouldn't do it in the real world: draw a pistol, carry a Mark 18 or something as a secondary weapon so you can fight with that. They could have gone the other way. They could have gone a more realistic way of you sling the rifle, you draw a pistol. But I do enjoy the fun of the hybrid weapon of long range, short range.
Did you see the size of those butts with 4 legs? I'm not trusting a Makarov to take those down.
Well, okay. Yep, that's fair. So you need something with greater stopping power than a pistol. I mean, for the weight and bulk of all the shotgun rounds you need to run this thing and the weapon itself, just carry a 11-inch barrel 5.56 or something, or a 9x39, something like that. I don't know. It makes a lot more sense in the game than it would in real life. You're going to sort of compromise your primary weapon. You're making it heavier and bulkier, potentially harder to actually rest on obstacles and barriers to do accurate shooting with as well, if you've got that gubbins hanging off the front of it. Interestingly, we do see the two turn screws, the 2 bolts get tightened up when he puts it on the rail, which I don't remember seeing with the optics.
To be honest, I could have put that shotgun on the bottom of a HK 416, but I thought it'd be funnier to show you it on a sniper rifle.
Yeah, I mean, can't fault the logic. Just, I wouldn't recommend it if you have to go and fight for real.
This is called the RPM 74, which it's not, but
It's one of these. It's a PKM. Looks like one. It sounds like one. I don't know why it isn't called one, because there's absolutely no legal reason to not. We saw the starter tab for the belt there. That was cool. So that sticks out the side until you cock it, and then it gets stripped off. The dust cover flapping madly out on the left side there. There's that click again. So yeah, there's really nothing to make that click on the real thing, but you need that feedback in theory. Although it not going bang is, you would think, feedback enough.
it's an interesting gun to use in game because, as I mentioned, weight is a massive consideration in Stalker 2.
Yeah.
So heavy weapon, using a lot of ammunition, it's a bit of a hard sell to use. But as soon as you unlock exoskeletons and your carrying capacity and strength increases in game, it becomes so much more feasible. Oh yeah, I'm wearing an exoskeleton while wielding this.
Yeah.
Which will help with the weight.
It will. And that's a fun concept for a game like this. It makes me twitch slightly because it's that era of Call of Duty where everything went sci-fi for several years. Yeah, I mean, this is... I'm kind of struggling because I'm seated, but this is actually a very lightweight general purpose machine gun. It's lighter than the FN Mag M240 if you prefer. But yeah, relative to just about anything else you could feasibly want to fight with, it's a hefty piece of kit.
In game, it fires 7.62 by 39, by the way.
Oh, why? Oh yeah, so it does. Yeah, interesting, because they could have gone with the RPD instead, and then it would have been correct. It sounds like 7.62 by 54. It looks like 7.62 by 54. Unless I'm going blind, that is a long-cased rimmed cartridge. So yeah, it's very much a gameplay, well, not gameplay, but an in-game contrivance to have it use the same ammo. Now this thing is kicking out disintegrating links, which if it's a PKM, it ought not to be, because it uses non-disintegrating link, which just comes outside and you load it back up and you stick it back in again, potentially. Or you would in this situation anyway.
So in reality, this fires 7.62 by 54?
Correct.
So that round is available for the SVD.
That's what I was thinking. It must be in the game somehow. So is this just a mistake, or is it a balancing thing?
If 7.62 by 54 is in this quote unquote sniper rifle ammunition category in the loot pool, it will be rarer. Whereas I think 7.62 by 39 is much easier to come across in the game. Yeah. It's allowing the player to keep it fed more easily.
I wonder if they designed this to take the correct ammo and then realized that the economy of the game they'd ended up with wouldn't permit it to be any use. Like, you can't get a belt of 100 or whatever 7.62 by 54 because it's by necessity scarce. Otherwise, your sniper rifle becomes the only weapon you'd use. And you don't want to make it bolt action or something stupid like that. So instead, you nerf the machine gun. Whereas if you're doing it from scratch, I dare say you would just make it an RPD. Interesting. As ever, we're sort of second-guessing decisions here that I'm sure are completely legitimate. Wow, that's a good sound. So we've got to have our sci-fi guns in this. I like the little arcs of electricity between those contacts, like lightning. It's got its own design aesthetic as well. Like they could have leaned more into like an AK furniture.
Well, I don't know if you agree, but this triggered in my mind because one of the versions is called the EM1. The foregrip reminded me of the EM2, but it's just like round and wooden.
A tiny bit. It looks to me, it's more reminiscent of a shotgun, like an Ithaca shotgun pump grip. Yeah, I think EM1 is probably a coincidence.
Yeah, the British rifle doesn't stand for electromagnetic 2.
Not to my knowledge.
It's classified as a sniper rifle in game because it has very little travel time, like basically instantaneous travel time from pulling the trigger to your round landing where you want it to be.
Makes some sense, I think. Good design there. Okay, no, the projectiles do look more like almost complete rounds. Not quite portal turret complete rounds, but they have a shape that in theory would be easy enough to feed in. But you still have the problem of there's no bolt to come in from the rear and feed them in. Something is going to have to come down and flick them in or something. Maybe there's a tiny electromagnetic thing pulling them into the chain. Like all good science fiction weapons, think about it too much and it doesn't make much sense. But it looks cool, sounds cool, does damage. I mean, who knows why those... I'm guessing each one of those things at the front is accelerating the projectile that bit more in a sequence. Why they all need to lift up and then come back down and crackle electricity, I don't know. Real life Gauss weapons are much less interesting to watch. That's probably the answer, isn't it? Also, probably user safety issues there. Like what happens if you put your fingers anywhere near those prongs? Here we go. It's that time. Emotional support MP5 in place. But I am aware of the history. So, as I understand it, the missing bit of sight protector here, which by the way, is something that some reprobates have done to the MP5, cut this bit out. Don't know why. I've even seen one where the front sight protector is completely cut away and it's just the front sight post insert that's left behind. Goodness knows why anyone did that. So that bit in itself is not implausible. What is implausible is it being left-hand. There is no left-handed version of the MP5, unfortunately, but that is a carryover from the original game.
I wonder if part of that is they thought, hey, we've already got an MP5 model in universe that seemingly they modeled with the cases ejecting to the left because it looks cool. But I wonder if there was a thought where, hey, H&K didn't chase us for this version. We know they're pretty litigious. Let's just make that version, but shinier, but current gen, because we know it's safe. We know no one's going to come knocking because of that version.
That's reasonable, but they have definitely modeled it to a much higher degree and textured it to a much higher degree of fidelity. And really the only thing that's different significantly is it ejecting from the left like that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it wasn't the only gun that did that in Stalker 1.
No, a lot of them did.
Maybe that backs up your theory, actually.
It was of the era where we want cool details on screen, so let's have the cases fly across the player's view.
It's a little frustrating because it's so close to being a really good MP5 that it makes me a little sad that it has those features.
Let me see if anyone's modded it to fix it. I'll do a live mod check.
And if they haven't, you know what you have to do, because I love me an MP5. MP5 drum mag. I'm sure I've seen someone attempt that. Now, the quick detach suppressor on that is definitely legit. That's what this tri-lug muzzle is all about. Push on under spring pressure, turn, and it's up against those stops and it's not going anywhere. One of the original quick detach suppressor systems.
I'm afraid I couldn't find a mod that flips
Boo.
the Viper 5 so it ejects to the right. Maybe modders are scared of H&K as well.
Maybe.
Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed our little trip through the zone. If you did, make sure you like the video, comment down below, and subscribe to EXP. And I want to give a massive shout out to our supporters over on Patreon for helping to make this episode happen. All the links you'll need to support the Royal Armouries will be in the description below, and as always, be sure to check out all the links to our Patreon and social pages to see more of us here at EXP. But one more time, I just wanted to say thank you for watching.